Hey, this is John from Pint Comics, and if my co-host Lloyd was here, he would tell you a couple things about this show. Number one, we swear way too fucking much. And number two, we drop spoilers without any warning. Now that you know that, listen in and enjoy the show.
Into our Coriolis storm. Winds at 800 kilometers an hour. Nothing survives such a storm. They're dead.
Happy November, everybody out there. We made it through October. You're listening to another episode of Pint Comics. My name is John.
And I'm Joe.
And we are here to talk about, we're talking about a movie that's been delayed and re-delayed and de-delayed and done delayed over and over again. We're going to be talking about the 2021 version of Dune. That's right. HBO Max recently released it along with a theatrical release. This thing has been talked about for quite a while. And I knew I wanted to have Joe on the show because, Joe, you like to bring up the 84 version of Dune quite a bit when we talk, right?
Yeah, in fact, I'm a little confused. I thought this was a TTT for the 1984 version. I didn't watch the new version.
Oh, no, come on. Get in front of that TV for the next 2 hours and I think 29 minutes or something.
A live stream. I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's a good idea. We can, I thought about doing Dune as a TTT, but do you think, is it considered trash, the 84 version, like overall?
I would probably say so because this is a niche property, right? Sort of. And I think that the fans probably didn't like it. And it didn't help that they cut an hour out of it, right?
It's going to be a little bit difficult, I think, for me, being somebody that grew up, we discussed this on prior shows, but we're approximately the same age. We both saw Dune in the theater in 84, right? You said you did as well, right?
I saw it. I saw it at Grandma's HBO.
Oh, okay. I saw it in the theaters. I think the initial appeal to Dune to kids our age was, it's Star Wars, and it's not. It's it's based on these books that came out in the early 60s from a guy named Frank Herbert. There's a series of them. It's science fiction, not space fantasy, and it's heavily political, and there's a lot of family drama and super beings and worms, and it's a lot denser than just saying, oh, this is another Star Wars property. And I think that, like, wrapping your head around it at 9 years old, I don't know about you, but like it never fully sunk all the way in.
Yeah, and it's funny because I realize now I don't think there's ever any kind of property that I've seen 3 adaptations of the same book plus read the book. So I've seen the 1984 version, the 2001 version on Sci-Fi, and this version, and I read the book like 10 years ago. So I don't think ever anything else that had the exact, adaptation of one property like that.
Yeah, it's a lot to have been redone that many times in that amount of time period. I remember in probably my teens or maybe early 20s, I picked the book up and I thought, hey, I'm going to read this. And it's one of those books that requires a lot of use of the glossary in the back, which is fine because, as we'll talk about in this movie, and also it goes for the 84 movie because it's all the same coming from the same story. There is a lot here. There is a lot, like and the 84 version didn't do it either. This version or 84, neither one of them spoon fed you anything. Like, you went in and you had to immediately just say, okay, I'm willing to not really get an exposition dump. I'm willing to just learn what they're going to tell me about these families and the worlds they're from. Why do they call it Dune when there is no Dune? It's Arrakis. And you know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah,
and,
I would agree. I think that it's very Tolkien-esque, the book, right? It's just crammed full of stuff, name after name after name. I think you see in this movie, there's names. It seems like there's multiple names for the same person almost.
Oh yeah, yeah,
like almost
definitely.
3, right? And so it's got a lot going on. It's a very dense book, and I think it just makes it for a long property. Long movie.
Yeah, and you talked about the adaptations that we got, and then there's also very famously the 70s Alejandro Jodorowsky adaptation. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. I highly recommend it, Joe, if you have not. It's called Jodorowsky's Dune. Have you seen that?
No, I think we talked about it on previous episodes too. It's a documentary, right?
Documentary. I as someone that at least, we'll get to the end of this and see where you stand on this movie, but you obviously have an interest in this if you're, watch the movie, the miniseries, the new movie, read the book. I think it's really important that you watch that documentary because before David Lynch was able to make the 84 version in the mid to late 70s, Jodorowsky spent years developing his version, and it was going to be absolutely batshit insane. Mick Jagger was going to play the Fade Rauthra role, which Sting played, and Orson Welles was going to play the Emperor. And there's a story behind how they got Orson Welles and Hans Rudy Geiger and Mobius, the famous French comic book artist, were basically like production artists on this thing, and it truly is. Joe, I tell you, check that out.
Yeah, it sounds like a Gonzo. It would have been a Gonzo 70s version.
Oh, and it was going to be like 9 hours long. It was going to be insane. Yeah, crazy shit. So let's talk a little bit about this one here, though. Let's focus on the 2021 version. So this was directed by Denis Villeneuve. No, I'm not being snooty. That's how you say his name. He's a French movie maker. Very recently made Blade Runner 2049, which I was kind of cold on in the theaters, being a huge Blade Runner fan. I watched it about a month ago. It's still not Blade Runner in terms of like quality to me, but like it really is a beautiful, like just amazing looking movie. This guy has an eye for locale and sound, and he could put a movie together very well. He did Arrival, which I've never seen, but everybody talks about. And the other one that he did that I did see and was much more down to earth was a movie called Prisoners with Hugh Jackman about 10 years ago about a little girl that goes missing, and the father, Hugh Jackman, who decides that he's going to either find her or find out what happened to her. And I don't know if you ever saw that one, Joe, but that's a very good kind of like, just like a thriller.
I have to tell you, he's my favorite director over the last 10 years. I mean, when I heard he was doing Dune, he excited me more almost than seeing Dune, because I mean every movie he's done, from Prisoners on, has been great. Now I still have to see Enemy, the one with Gyllenhaal and the doppelganger.
Yeah,
but I mean Sicario, Arrival is fantastic, and he gets a little more artsy after when Arrival came around, and then Blade Runner 2049, now Dune. I mean, he is just great. I think he's getting a little more creative and, more, I guess, artistic. And, they called him an auteur, which is a French word. So, he is one.
He must be, because he's French. It's a French word. So, yeah, he directed this. He also is one of the three guys that wrote the screenplay. And funnily enough, he is not known for writing his own screenplays. Nothing else in terms of his American output did he have anything to do with. From what I could see, it looked like maybe some of his French films he did. The two other guys that wrote the screenplay, Eric Roth, who wrote The Adventures, or was it called The Adventures? Benjamin Button, whatever that movie was called, and Forrest Gump. Yeah, and he's 75 years old, so this guy's still writing screenplays. Good for him. And a guy named John Spaeths, I think I'm saying that right. He's probably best known for Prometheus, and he wrote Doctor Strange for Marvel. So this guy is kind of a current screenwriter, got his name out there.
Yeah, and Eric Roth, I mean, his biography here is amazing. And, he wrote Forrest Gump by himself. He adapted it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just going to go on a limb without looking and say he won best adapted screenplay for that. I don't know. Need to check, I think.
Yeah, I don't know, but that was the year that movie like rocked everything.
Yeah.
To a lot of people's chagrin, I don't understand people that really hate Forrest Gump. I think I like Forrest Gump, and I think Forrest Gump is a perfect example of just like kind of like watching what ends up being this really kind of heartfelt, feel good story. I think that's why some people hate it, is because it's saccharine and yeah, it can be a little bit goofy, but I have a hard time hating anything Tom Hanks is in.
Well, that was Pulp Fiction year, so that was I was ride or die Pulp Fiction. and then Shawshank Redemption, which I guess could have competed for Best Adapted Screenplay too. That was just such a good year. But I mean, yeah, Forrest Gump, you can't hate it.
Yeah, I hear a lot of hate in the podcast community. A lot of shows I listen to. The Countdown down in Australia, who I love. I think Paul, who's been on this show before, I think he hates it, and I'm always like, come on, man, you're better than that. But it's okay.
So cinematography, I think that's an important. Usually we don't talk about the DP, but this guy Greg Fraser. There's some good movies that I guess only a couple of them I would really think about for cinematography. He's basically all over Mandalorian, and he did Rogue One, so that was some pretty good stuff. Zero Dark 30, I think you don't really need that look. But Killing Them Softly, I saw he did that, and that had a definitely mood. I'm a big fan of Killing Them Softly with Brad Pitt. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's on Netflix.
I've never seen that. That's where he's like a hitman or something.
Yeah. It's like a slow burn, and it's got a lot of, I don't know, undertones about Bush and the Iraq War. But I mean, I'm just a big fan. So if you ever haven't seen it, check it out.
This was filmed all over. It was filmed partially in Hungary. That's where a lot of the studio work was done. Arrakis, aka Dune, was United Arab Emirates. Is it Emirates or Emiratis? How do you say that?
I think Emirates.
Emirates. Okay. A lot of that was filmed there, and in Jordan, and Caladan, which is the home world of our hero, was filmed in Norway, which is it's an ocean planet, and they used Norway and a lot of nice lush greens and a lot of water. So that was very cool. Joe, why don't you let's get into this expanded fucking cast. This is a juicy fucking cast.
And it's interesting. I think they're sort of listed by their importance in the book more so than their, screen time in this movie. So yeah, you have a big cast. I think some people didn't show up in the movie as much as they did in the book, right? Because that's something. But yeah, so it's like the order. It may or be, you may not consider that's like the most famous person always listed at the right time. So we got Timothy Chalamet, plays Paul Atreides. I think he's been mostly doing indies, but I know he got his start. I haven't seen it, but Call Me by Your Name, where he's has a relationship with Armie Hammer, I guess before it got canceled. And
Armie Hammer's a cannibal. What?
And then he did this movie called Lady Bird that was directed by Greta Gerwig. I don't know her independent stuff. She's kind of kooky, and I think that was a pretty well-regarded movie. It's got Saoirse Ronan, if that's how you say it. Saoirse.
No, it's Saoirse.
Saoirse. Oh, that's like the Irish pronunciation, like Shoban. So he got to start there. I think he did all indies. This is his first big name thing, big name movie. Then we have Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica Atreides. She's been in she's been a mainstay in the last few Mission Impossibles, and she's up for the next two.
Yep.
So that's the good stuff. And then Greatest Showman, and then Dr. Sleep. I think those are her biggest titles. Which I haven't seen Dr. Sleep. I don't know if you have.
I have not yet. I hear it's great. And Rebecca Ferguson is like low key gorgeous. Like there's something about her. Like she's not like bam in your face, but she's just very beautiful.
She doesn't look old enough to be Paul Atreides' mother.
12 years older. She's only 12 years older.
I think what I feel in the book, right? He's supposed to be a teenager anyway, and where you don't see that in the movies, I'm not sure. For some reason, I thought he was, but I could be wrong.
In the book,
18, 19.
In the book, he's 15, and this is only from reading it. I didn't read the book. In 1984, Kyle MacLachlan was 25 when he played him, but Kyle MacLachlan was a 35-year-old looking 25-year-old.
Yeah.
At least Chalamet is 23 and looks like an 18-year-old 23. So he definitely looks more of the age range that you're supposed to be getting from this.
Well, I think what you're saying is we're so old we can't tell the difference between late teens and early 20s because I can't anymore. Yeah,
that doesn't help either.
And we have Oscar Isaac as Duke Leto Atreides, obviously Poe Dameron in Star Wars. He's got, just to mention, his upcoming role is in Metal Gear Solid. Like he's solid.
Oh, really?
That's up and coming. But he's done some smaller roles. The Most Violent Year, which is any movie I love. So I pick out the titles I tend to know from IMDb. And then Ex Machina, which I should have seen and haven't.
It's good. I think it's one of those ones I saw once and I enjoyed, and I think people hype it more than I thought it was. I didn't think it was as good as the hype, but I still thought it was a good movie. And he's got a great scene in the movie where he dances. He plays this like kind of eccentric like tech billionaire, and he has this these really realistic like women robots, and one of them's this very hot like a girl, and they have this whole choreographed dance scene that's very good in it.
Well, I think eccentric tech billionaire is just a tech billionaire. So
yeah, you're right.
It's like redundant. Then we have Zendaya as Chani. Now she's listed this high up because she's a fairly big name now, I guess, but she obviously isn't in this movie very much.
If you like sweeping shots of Zendaya staring into the camera, then this movie is for you. If you're wanting more than just like 15 minutes of her in the actual movie at the end, then you might be in trouble. But yeah, she shows up quite a bit, like, in those little sweeping shots.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
No,
but she's known for the Spider-Man's Home, every title with home in it. And she's done a lot of, I think she did a lot of kids, when she was a kid, did a lot of work in some music videos, because a lot of her credits said like Beyonce and Lady Gaga or something. And then she's on the show Euphoria on HBO, which is, I've never seen it, but I heard it's HBO off the hook, like Game of Thrones, raunchy.
Yeah, I've heard it's about a bunch of like, I think like hardcore partying, like teens and stuff. Yeah. And yeah, I'm at that age range where I don't know if that's like what I want to watch. Even if you tell me it's a good show, I don't know. It just,
Oh, no, I'm all right. It's our age. I'm all for just trying to cling to the Gen X material.
Yeah, I don't want to show up. I don't want my viewership habits to show up on any kind of list. Let's put it that way.
We got Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. We'll talk about that name later, I think.
It's funny because Momoa has been in a ton of things, and he's a popular guy, and I've always liked him. But like he's like, except for maybe Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones, which he was great in, and obviously, we know him from Aquaman and Justice League and Aquaman movie, and he's been in other things too. I always like him, and I always want to have him in something that I like him a lot in. Man, he might have been my favorite thing in this movie. Like in terms of like, he is fucking great. He is great. He plays a character essentially who is like the swordsman, like the weapons master of House Atreides, and we'll get into all that in a little bit. But
he's the hand of the king.
Yeah,
you got reference.
he's essentially the hand of the king, and he's got this really good relationship with where he's obviously very loyal to Duke Leto, but he's also a mentor to Paul, and they have this really great like bond. And I loved him in it. And he also happens to, whatever you're going to say about the movie in the end, he also happens to get some of the most badass scenes in the movie. When the chips fall and shit's going down, he gets some of the cooler scenes in the movie.
So you're gushing. So I'm thinking you have a man crush, just like I have a man crush on him, because you can't avoid that smile. He sees like a nice guy in real life because he loves his wife. He's always nice in public. So he's great. He was my favorite thing about this movie too.
I might have a man crush because I actually noticed that in the first scene he's in, he has a beard, and then in the rest of the movie he's clean shaven, and I'm like, ooh, he shaved. Like, ooh, they shaved.
I was kind of baffled by that, but I guess it was. It's almost, was he filming something else in between? He had to go back and retrofit it or something.
Very possible. Very possible.
I mean, they didn't want to do a Superman on him.
Yeah. Well, his character does have a job to do at the point where he does seem to be clean shaven. He has to go as the forward, the kind of the reconnaissance force to Arrakis, and so maybe he's like, hey, I'm going ahead. Let me look the part.
I'm going to a bunch of people that live underground. I want to look good.
Yeah.
And it's funny about him. He got his start on Baywatch. I never watched it, but he, if you ever seen a picture, he looks like just a normal swimmer dude. I mean, jacked like Michael Phelps, but he wasn't today's Jason Momoa. He was a normal dude. I mean, Baywatch, they can only be so big and be a lifeguard, but
there was that in between period where I didn't watch it, but I know he was on Stargate Atlantis.
Yeah, I saw
that. And that was kind of like he had the dreads, and he was kind of becoming, eventual Conan the Barbarian Momoa.
And there's Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck. Obviously, he's Thanos, probably his biggest payday. Goonies, of course. Remember, he was early on. He was Goonies.
Yeah, he was the brother. Yeah,
yeah, and he was in No Country for Old Men, which I have to say now competes with Big Lebowski as my favorite Coen Brothers movie. It's tough because, man, I love No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, but where's Raising Arizona in that whole?
I mean, there's nothing I don't like in it. All I still have to see Ballad of Buster Scruggs, but there's no bad Coen Brothers movie. There's just tip top, I guess.
Okay, fair.
And then Sicario, which I love, also another Denis Villeneuve movie. And then he was in Grindhouse, Planet Terror.
Josh Brolin, he has a niche about him, and I do like him. But if you ever pay attention to Josh Brolin's roles, aka like you said, Planet Terror and Sicario, and the W when he played George W. Bush, no matter what level of dickhead it is, he excels at playing like jerk offs and dickheads. You notice that about him?
Yes, I was actually going to mention that. Yeah, he's very good as a dickhead. And there was that story when he was filming W about, getting into some argument over politics and where they're filming Louisiana, because I don't think he's a W, he wasn't a Bush supporter. And they started like a bar brawl.
Right.
So yeah, he looks just like angry all the time.
Yeah.
And I think Sicario really brought that out of him.
Sicario was a perfect example because he just plays this like very duplicitous kind of like, and it goes with the job, right? It goes with that guy's job, but he plays him very well. He plays him like the guy that you could imagine forgetting about you, like at the drop of a hat if he needs to, and he everything I see him in. He was in the American version of Old Boy, which I didn't hate. I love Old Boy. I didn't hate it. But again, if you watch that, the whole idea of the movie is that he's being taught a lesson, and it starts off with him being this fucking complete jerk off.
Yeah, I didn't see the American version. I only saw the Korean version. So, but yeah, if he's a jerk, he learns his lesson there. And then we have Dave Bautista as Beast Raban Harkonnen. So I thought it was Harkonnen. That's what I want to talk about also. In other versions, it was Harkonnen, but I guess they're saying Harkonnen here. I don't know how you know the difference if it came in a book, but maybe that's one thing I noticed about this. And of course, he's Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy. He just had Army of Dead come out. And he was in Blade Runner 2049 briefly, so it's another Denis Villeneuve movie. And he was in Riddick, although I don't remember him in that. Of course, he's a wrestler, known for that. But I actually really like him. He's pretty good. I mean, he's been better. He seems like a really nice guy. I listened to another podcast he was on, and he apparently had a rough upbringing, and he just sort of escaped that, became a wrestler, and now he's sort of a generally nice guy. But I don't know what your thoughts about Bautista are.
I like him a lot. I enjoyed him a lot, and obviously Guardians as Drax. He's very humorous, and he's been in other things I liked. I really wanted to like him in that Hotel Artemis. I liked him in that, but the movie was just not very good. But yeah, he was great in his little moment in Blade Runner 2049. In this one, I felt like, and again, because there's still the option, and we'll get to it about part 2, I felt like he was underused in this one. As much as I like Momoa, I didn't get that out of Dave Bautista because his character is so kind of one note and like just kind of like low key. And we'll get to it, but I think the Harkonnens as a whole, comparatively to the 84 version, I think suffer in this version comparatively. I think they were much more memorable in the 84 version.
Yeah, we've discussed this before. And I mean, this one they just didn't really do much.
Right.
Maybe they'll do more in the next movie. But yeah, I mean, they were visual more than they were, verbal. So we got Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. He's a pretty good actor. It's hard to see him I picked him out over all the makeup and the fat suit. But, he's been around a long time. I think probably his most famous movie, I guess you'd probably say Good Will Hunting. I mean, Thor Dark World, I think we agree is not good, right?
Yeah.
So he's less known for that. I think he's on River, a show on Netflix I'd never seen. The Exorcist, the beginning, which I was hopeful for, but then it was bad. 2 versions of it, too. He did 2 versions of that movie. I think I saw the second version, the one that was, then they fire, was it Barbette Schroeder? Who they fired? They fired one director and did the whole thing over again. And I think
they redid it with Rennie Harlan. I don't remember that both versions came out. I don't remember. I saw them both. I remember when they came out, I watched them both. And one of them was, the Rennie Harlan one was much more of a slick Hollywood production. Yeah. And the Schroeder or whoever did the other one was much more of an indie feel, like kind of like a darker movie, not as slick, not as Hollywoodized. But I mean, it's the same story. It's actually interesting. I'd almost like to do a show on that at some point, like watch both of them and comparatively, talk about both of them. There we go. That's a show idea, Joe, and you're on it.
Boom.
So
write it down. Perfect.
Write that down.
I got it. It's up here.
It's right here.
And he was in Deep Blue Sea. You know, I enjoy Deep Blue Sea. I wouldn't call it high art or anything, but
Love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's always enjoyable. And Ronin, and then which I like with is a Robert De Niro, right?
Yeah,
and I think it was one of John Frankenheimer's last movies, probably.
I've never seen it, funnily enough, but and I've always wanted to. But yeah, it either was his last movie or very close to the end.
I have to admit, sometimes I find it amusing the movies you haven't seen.
Yeah,
because you've seen so many movies. Like it's obvious for me to not see a movie. I haven't watched as many in the last 10 years or so. But like you've never seen Caddyshack, right?
No, and I still haven't.
It kind of cracks me up. And his last movie, I mean, I think it was Skarsgård first showed up in Hunt for October as the Russian submarine captain. That's the first time I guess I remember him. So then we have Stephen McKinley Henderson, who I probably couldn't pick out of a lineup before this, as Zafir Hawat. Oh, he's in Fences, Lady Bird, Lincoln, and Manchester by the Sea. I don't think I could have picked him out. I mean, I guess I've seen Lincoln and Manchester by the Sea, but he wasn't too memorable to me.
As soon as he popped up on screen, I went, I know this guy, but I don't know who this guy is. And when I looked him up today or yesterday, I saw some stuff that I'm like, okay, maybe I know him from that, but he's very familiar face, very, very maybe more TV work, but yeah.
And then we keep going. We got a lot of people.
Yeah, keep going.
We have Charlotte Rampling as Reverend Mother Mahayam Bene Gesserit. Is that how they list her? Honestly, I thought Charlotte Rampling had a bigger filmography. I was surprised because I know her. And I guess for some reason, she hasn't been as many movies as I thought, right? Many movies that I've seen or newer movies that I thought she was a bigger, like older, sort of a mother figure in the movies like this one. But she was on Dexter. She was in Orca.
Right. She's the female lead in Orca. Yep.
And I don't remember her from Spy Game, and I guess she probably had a decent cash in for Assassin's Creed.
And in this, she's what? She's the Bene Gesserit.
Is it Bene Gesserit? Bene Gesserit? I can't.
Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, I mistyped it on my screen. Yeah. So I mean, she was freaky. I couldn't really tell it was her because she had all the makeup. It's like
the makeup, and then she wears that veil.
Yeah. It's like the shame woman from
Ding Ding
from Got, who's also like in Ted Lasso, and you couldn't tell, you wouldn't ever be able to pick her out.
That blew my mind because I watched Ted Lasso, and then I saw that she, I think she won an Emmy or she won something, and they said she was from Got. So I was like, okay, who was she? And then I'm like, holy fuck, she was the Shane Bell ringer.
And then so we have not a big part, but obviously I think he's going to play a bigger part. This Babs Olusankamokin. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, as Jameis. Lots of TV work. Assume in Britain, but no real credits, I think we know. And we have Sharon Duncan Brewster as Dr. Liet Kynes. And I think in the book, it's a man, so I think they converted this character to a woman, which
they did. In the Dune, in the 84 version, it was Max von Sydow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I forgot about that.
She's essentially the character that is like she's the facilitator of the switchover, of the changeover.
Because he's got an important part. We have Chen Chang as Dr. Wellington Yu, and he's had a bunch of parts in Asian movies. I think the one I've heard of is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but maybe some other martial arts movies you might have seen him in. And then I just want to mention this guy because he's creepy as hell. This David Dastamalkian is Peter DeVries, and he's like the Harkonnen advisor. And he doesn't need makeup to look creepy.
No.
He just looks like himself, and he's like in Gotham. Is he sort of supposed to be like a penguin in that Gotham show? I haven't seen it because he plays the voice of the penguin in all these movies.
I don't know what he did in Gotham. I watched one episode and bailed. But he was Polka Dot Man in Suicide Squad. Did you see Suicide Squad?
Oh yeah, okay. I totally forgot that.
In Blade Runner 2049, he was one of the cops, one of like the forensic cops that love the android kills. And in Prisoners, he was like a child molester, I think, who was like out. And I think Jackman initially thinks it's him that took the kid. So he's just like, he's a great character actor because he is such a bizarre looking guy, not remembering. Because I mean, really, when it comes down to it, and we could just jump into the movie here, really, when it comes down to it, the 84 version of Dune didn't do like some kind of like massive disservice to the novel, right? I'm sure things are a little different, but it was close enough that if you saw the 84 version of Dune, except for the truncation of this one, things just roll out the same way. There maybe there's some added little features here, and there's some differences here, but I mean, it is essentially, so if there's a character you're thinking of that died in the 84 version, they died here too. You know, so like it's just not that far off. Now, the first thing I want to ask you, Joe, is a question outside of the movie itself. I didn't know that this movie only covered the first half of the novel until about a month or two ago. Now, this movie has been finished and waiting to be put out since COVID, October of 2020, delayed a couple times. Mm-hmm. I read a bunch of stuff online. I try to stay up on my news. I'm not saying I catch everything, but I didn't know that until very recently. I've had other friends of mine say, I didn't realize that this was only one half of the novel, or did you know this is only one half of the novel? Now, my question to you, Joe, is, let's say you're not Dr. Joe, but you're Joe Sixpack, and you don't know nothing about Dune, right? You know nothing about
Dune. On Dune, I am.
Oh, and on Dune, yeah, you're a Sixpack. you're a schlub on Dune. You're a schmo. So let's say you're Joe Sixpack, and you decide that, COVID has eased up a bit. I'm going to take the wife and kid out to go see this movie Dune that all I know about is that it's a big budget science fiction movie, and I'm looking forward to seeing this. And you go and you spend the $100+ to get tickets and to get your kid a bucket of popcorn the size of her, and you and the wife get all the snacks you want and drinks the size of your head. How do you feel when you sit down and at the very beginning of this movie, when the credits arise, it says Dune Part 1? Do you think that, now I knew this, but like, do you think that they owe it to anybody to kind of advertise it that way? Because this movie really, really, and I have to stress this, if you haven't seen it yet, you're either not going to see it because you're listening, or you're about to turn it off. But if you don't know that this thing ends halfway through the story, you're going to be shocked when this thing ends. The story moves forward, but there is no answers or anything to any kind of fruition at all. Boom, end. And to add one more layer to this question, until yesterday, as we record this, they did not know that they were going to be able to make a sequel. So as of yesterday, who's the company that put this out?
Legendary
has, they've decided they've made enough money, or, everything's moving the right way, where they said, we've greenlit part 2. But this was essentially very possibly going to be one half. So how would you feel, Joe? Or if you don't want to answer it that way, what do you think of the whole idea of putting this out as a part 1 without really advertising that?
So, yeah, I didn't know until about a month ago too. So I had no idea. Even now I'm irritated, and I know the story, right? That's like annoying, especially when you don't know if you have a part 2. I think, Joe Schmo movie fan that wants to see a sci-fi movie probably wouldn't know that it would just cut off. And I would probably be pissed at the end of the movie if I had no idea about the story. I'm like, what the hell happened? And I just find it's risky to do that when you don't have it greenlit for part 2, because then you just have an end, like a nothing story that just no resolution. And what the hell did it end right here, right? So I would be irritated if I went to the movies, my family did that. And I was going to talk about too, does it need 2 movies? I mean, I guess it's such a long book that you could do it. But let's face it, there were a lot of long, shots, really just slow-mo shots, the flashbacks or the visions. Maybe something could have been trimmed if you wanted to tack it into one movie. I mean, love the direct, like I said, love Denis Villeneuve. I think he got a little too artistic at times, and maybe you could have crunched it down. But yeah, with you, I would just be, if I didn't know ahead of time, I'd be like, what the hell is this when it cut off? You know what everybody wants, right? At the end. Yeah.
You want the worm, you want the conflict between the two families. You want a lot of things. You want a lot of stuff that you're promised. I'm not necessarily taking a side, but like, I also wonder, like, what is it about today's day and age where we can't, like, why? I get it, but why would you greenlight one Dune movie where it's going, like, I would understand if they said, okay, we're going to greenlight Dune and make the whole first book, just like they did in 84, because the 84 version is the whole first book. truncated, obviously, but it's a complete story. I would understand if they said, we're going to greenlight that and make that. Now, if we ever get to Children of Dune, that's going to depend on whether or not, or whatever's next, God Emperor of Dune, or whatever the next book in the series is. That's going to depend on how the first one does. But like to go ahead and say, we're going to make half of a movie, and then we're going to wait and see. It just seems like so strange that in a 20 years after Peter Jackson was able to make 3 Lord of the Rings movies at the same time, and obviously he made fucking 3 Hobbit movies at the same time. What has changed? You know, did COVID affect it? This movie was made before COVID. So I haven't read a lot or dug into that too heavily, and that's not even what I want to get into so much. But I do find that fascinating that, you know, that someone was like saying, okay, we're going to make this, because there was just as good of a chance, especially once they doubled down and said this is going to HBO Max, which Villeneuve hated the idea of, that this could have been a box office flop. Because as we talked about earlier, the 84 version, people aren't like, oh, another Dune, you know? People of our age are probably like, oh shit, they're going to do Dune again, you know?
And like I said, I was excited because of Denis Villeneuve. Like I wasn't, I mean, I like the story, whatever. It's good sci-fi. Like I said, it's very, I think it has a smaller, maybe rabid fan base. It's not as big as, let's say, Lord of the Rings, right? It's not a guaranteed hit. This really doesn't maybe appeal to kids in the same way. Was it PG? I didn't even check if it was PG-13 or R. I assume PG-13 because you couldn't make your money back an R movie.
Yeah,
PG-13. I don't think that's appealed. I don't know if that's appealed to kids. So you're taking a big chance, and that's happened before. Because that the Divergent series of
the fourth one was never made, right?
Or the third one. I guess they never even got to. I think it was 3 books and never got to the third one. I think what happened. I think it was Divergent, Allegiant, and they were talking about getting the third one going to TV and all these things. I think they never finished that series.
That's the definition of insanity to me.
Yeah,
that you make 2 big budget movies, you put them out there, you spend millions of dollars, you tie up crews and casts and these A-list actors to do these things, and then you're just like, that's it. like honestly, if they did not, I will get to what my rating is on this movie, but I was hoping that they were going to greenlight 2, just for the fact of, I don't want this movie to go down in history as, oh yeah, remember how they never made another one, and they only made half of a fucking movie.
Yeah, and I want the fucking worms. I want,
yeah,
I better have my worms if I'm going to go to Dune. That's the first thing you see if you see the book. When I was a little kid, I saw it. My parents' shelf was like, wow, look at these big worms. And you barely got any. So there'll be no satisfaction, no closure without a second one. So,
Judd, do you want the Herculean task of kind of describing to the audience what this whole thing is about, kind of?
Oh, how in depth?
Okay, on a scale of 1 to 3, give me a 1.5. Like bumper sticker it, but with a little bit of pepper some stuff in there.
So we have this planet with a very important natural resource that powers space travel throughout the whole world.
It's a drug.
But it also powers the ships or so, right?
It does, but it's a drug.
Yeah, it's a drug also. Yeah, it's like meth or something.
Yeah.
PCP. And there's a sort of a galactic empire, I guess you'd put it, not in the Star Wars way. And the Emperor already has one sort of evil family on the planet, but he decides to switch it out for another family, the Atreides family, who would have to leave their home planet and take over the mining operations. And it's basically a secret plan to lure them out of their planet where they're strong into a weaker position in order to wipe them out. Is that too much? Spoiler alert?
No, that's good. Although all spoilers here, you've heard the show, you've been on it. Okay, so I'll add a little bit to that. So the son of the Atreides family, the next in line to be the Duke, is a half Bene Gesserit. So his father has a concubine who's a Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserits are these powerful witch women that have all these powers, and they are trying to create a super being to be born as supposed to be a girl, born as a girl, and she'll be kind of the most powerful of the Bene Gesserits. I think it's called the the Quidex Super Dooch or something. I can't remember the name.
I have it written down, and I got confused between that and the Freeman, Messiah is Al Gahib. So
Yeah.
you have a couple of overlapping, I guess, prophecies, right?
So the Bene Gesserit woman, Jessica, who's married to Duke Leto, has a son. Oh, no, she's not married. They're not married. I'm sorry.
Concubine.
She's his concubine. But she has a son instead of a daughter. That's Paul. That's our hero. But she teaches him the ways of the Bene Gesserit. So he's kind of a superhero, kind of like he's learning things. One of the things he learns, and I do like how they do it in this movie, is called the voice, where essentially it reminds me very much of, if you've ever read the comic book Preacher, the Jesse's power was called the word of God, where he essentially can make you do anything he wants. And that's essentially what the voice is here. He could tell you to do something and you do it. Now he's learning. So we see several times in the movie he tries and he can't. Another thing I like that they added into this one, that I don't know if it's from the book, but it was not in the 84 version that I remember, was kind of a sign language that Jessica and other Bene Gesserits and Paul use amongst each other. Very simple, but a good way to convey messages. Paul is having these dreams about Zendaya and her blue on blue eyes, and he doesn't know what it means, but he knows he is also having dreams about Arrakis, which is called Dune, and the spice, and the spice is life and all that stuff. So we kind of have the feeling that he's meant for bigger things, right?
Well, first off, you're skirting around an issue, maybe not. I'm thinking that Lucas might have taken some Jedi ideas from this book.
Oh, very possible.
Because the voice. I mean, she used the Force on somebody. If you want to, get something that people know more of, and this came before Star Wars, right? Like 15 years or something like that, as the book was written. So I got heavy Star Wars vibes, which of course, overall, is just Jesus Christ and everything, right? It's just like, obviously he's Messiah. You can actually call him Messiah. They just have a different word for it, right?
The Muad'Dib.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I don't know if they even say it in this one, but I know that's from 84.
Yeah, well, it's like the Al Gahib. I couldn't keep it straight because there's so many words. But yeah, so I'm getting you get sort of a Star Wars vibe. If, you're not familiar with Dune, obviously it came first, it's got its own thing. I think it's quite a different mythology, but you're getting a lot of those sort of vibes from that. I think it works on its own here because it's so different, but I still, I feel like people would just relate to that maybe.
At any point in this movie, when Jessica, the lovely Rebecca Ferguson, would use the voice, did you get kind of turned on? I got kind of turned on when she would, because it would, like, her voice would go weirdly deeper and she'd get very commanding, and she'd be like, untie us. And I'm like, oh, something happened there.
I can see that. I mean, she was just, to me, a good screen presence anyway.
Yeah.
And I kind of like her as sort of a hero too, as opposed to, Leto Atreides, who dies pretty quickly, right? And so I think it's nice to have a mother figure and, sort of a female figures in the Bene Gesserit that are really sort of the religious folk, the mystical people that have the powers versus, that's even from the book, right? That's not just
right
changing it for the movie. It's like really part of I think it's a good mythology to have. And so as part of that, Rebecca Ferguson, the mom just sort of, Lady Jessica, I guess, she sort of, was very strong and very, very good character to have there.
Yeah, she definitely has to take up the Oscar Isaac. We lose Oscar Isaac halfway through this movie, so we got to kind of have someone pick up the slack. We get Oscar Isaac as his father, Leto, who is this this leader of the planet of Caladan and the Atreides family, who has been put in charge of this spice operation on Dune. And we talked about before, Jason Momoa plays Duncan Idaho, which, hey, it's a great porn name at the very least, yeah. Right?
Yes, exactly. Well, I would like to go back to Oscar Isaac as Leto Atreides. I think in my head, I was able to separate a lot of the characters from 1984. To me, I don't see him as a leader like that. I don't see him as a strong sort of king figure compared to Jürgen Prochnow, right, from the original.
Yeah, I can see him.
I struggle with that. Like, he seemed a little young. I mean, I know he's got a young kid. I didn't quite get there with him. I think he does a good job. I mean, he's a great actor. I'm a fan, but I just didn't feel like he was quite right for the role. So, I mean, he's gone already, so it doesn't make a big deal, but a big difference.
Yeah, he gets we'll jump around this one a bit, but he gets traded upon by Dr. Yui, which we've also seen in the prior films. And he goes out with a poisonous tooth. He takes out in the 84 version, I think he just kills like one guy. In this one, that tooth kills everybody in the fucking room, except for the person he wanted to kill, which is kind of ironic. He wanted to kill Vladimir Harkonnen, and everybody else dies. Peter De Vries or whatever his name was, the one David Dalmatian, he goes down, and everybody else in the room, but not the guy he wants to kill. I think it's funny that you say that about Oscar Isaac, because I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I feel the same way on the Harkonnen end. Like, I felt like the Harkonnens in the 84 version were more memorable because they were one of the weirdest parts of that movie. So, you're on Caladan in the 84 movie for a much shorter period of time, but you just feel like you're in the presence of this kind of royal family, right? You almost feel like they're the Brit, like the royal British, right? Like, dressed blues and all that stuff. But then you go to the planet that the Harkonnens are from, Giedi Prime, and it's just like these fucking weird, like punk rock, like dressed in like diapers and leather, like fucking freak shows, right? All orange hair and heart plugs and cat milking machines, if you remember that. And there's just all kinds of weird stuff going on there. And I feel like in this one, I feel like they kind of did that a disservice a little bit, the weirdness aspect of it, and just brought them back. And maybe it's closer to the book, so I could be totally wrong, but just brought them back to the realm of dark bad guys, right? Like that's what I felt.
Well, my feelings on this, I've talked to you about it before. I think that's a lot of Lynchian aspect of the other Dune, not necessarily from the book, but the weirdness of that is very David Lynch.
The pustules and the
and they're like essentially that thing with the clip where Baron Harkonnen's getting something drawn out of his pustule on his face, and I don't know if the other guy ate it. I mean, there's a lot of weird. I mean, milking cats is kind of weird.
Milking cats. There's obviously, if you remember from the 84 version, there's like some heavy intonations that Harkonnen is gay, and he's like kind of tormenting like there's that young guy with the flowers, and he pulls his heart plug out, and like, yes, that might be Lynchian stuff, but I feel like it's more memorable. Like when we get to Harkonnen in this one, in that one, I feel like he is a like fucking freak show, memorable character, and then you also get Rabin and you get Fade, played by Sting, who we don't even get in this one. I'm assuming we'll get him in the next one. We don't even get that character.
I hope they get Sting. Just kidding.
that'd be actually kind of cool. But like in this one, I felt more like Harkonnen reminded me more of like the Vincent D'Onofrio Kingpin. Like just this kind of, he still floats because he can't walk. He's still gluttonous, that scene where he's eating dinner is pretty fucking gross. But like, he's just kind of like this big fat bully, and he's the leader of a bunch of big fat fucking bullies. And I just felt like in the end, I'm going to always remember the 84 version of the Harkonnens more than this version here.
I think it wouldn't have been so bad also to make them more human. I mean, they were more alien because they're evil and dark, and the Baron is just not like a normal man. He's just like Jabba the Hutt practically, right?
Right.
Not just how big he can walk. I thought it wasn't very human. I think maybe the book, if I can't, it's been so long since I read it. I feel like they could have been more human of bad guys versus these sort of weird, sort of freakish people. I mean, they could still be bad guys without being all weird. Everything's so dark and David Dalmatian. But yeah, I mean, I think actually when you talk about the 84 version, what's memorable of this? So my question is, where did they get the visual style for the uniforms, everything? Because I don't remember like seeing it from the book. Obviously, the suits are pretty obvious, easy to make. Just get the nose. The water recycling from the nose area and just build a suit from that. But I guess I don't remember the book being so descriptive of why everybody's wearing brown. And I feel like if Lynch sort of started that, the 2000 sci-fi version looked just like that, and this one really follows that stylistically. What's to say? I'm wondering where they're getting this vision of the Atreides, family and the Harkonnens, like where they're getting that from. Is it from Lynch? Is it from the book? I couldn't tell because it looks like they're, it looks to me like Lynch just sort of started something and they sort of toned it down, but still followed the same visual style.
Well, again, I didn't read the book, you did, but I understand that, having read something, 15, 20 years ago, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's not like books, unfortunately, are not like movies for most people because most people don't reread books all the time. You could watch a movie 10 times in your lifetime or, in a 1 year period and it's right up there. A book, you're done with it. And you're like, okay, next. Yeah. Brain dump. I don't know. I mean, maybe as much as everybody seemed to hate the Lynch version, maybe he got a large part of it, pretty right. Because I got to be honest with you, like the still suits, the Fremen wear, like it looked just like the ones from the 84 version. Like you would honestly think like making this movie, you're going to try your hardest to go, the still suits are like one of the biggest aesthetic pieces of this movie. Everybody knows the still suit. We got to make these ours. And instead it's like, no, we just literally took the ones from 84 out of the closets, spray painted them a little bit and just fucking went that way. Oh, we added a face mask to it. Cool.
But yeah, that's my point, right? Is that they, did Lynch just sort of start the visual style? I mean, it just looks kind of the same, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. It just, I don't know if it was supposed to, I thought Denis Villeneuve would sort of reimagine it in his own way, but it sort of followed the same visual style, but even for, like I said, for everyone else, the Atreides and, the fat Baron sort of floating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, get right, talking a little bit about the visual style, and especially where it comes from, whether it's the book or not, the personal shields. Yes, they're blocky and much goofier in 84, but they're essentially the same thing in this one. I still don't understand how those work because you turn the shield on and, like a high-speed attack can't hurt you, but somebody could slowly push a blade through. Like
that's exactly, I was going to point that out too. How the hell is that possible?
Like there were points where people were literally touching other people through it. Like, cause the shield turns like a blue. And then when someone gets through the shield, it turns red. And they even, I think in the 84 version, they even bring it up, like the slow blade kills, you know what I mean? But it's like, then what's the fucking point of this thing? There's,
I think principle-wise, that's actually how Kevlar works.
Oh, really?
From my old job, I think that is like basically you get stabbed through it, but it'll harden up when a bullet hits it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but yeah, I just still find it weird that let's get this little blade, little dart, and goes right through it, and
when Leto gets stunned, essentially, like the little dart hovers over it and just worms its way through. It's like, that's not a shield. I don't know how you guys understand the concept of shields. That's not a shield.
Well, and also if it's a slow blade, Duncan Idaho died by a fast blade. I mean, he was swinging on everybody. He was cutting right through there.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a little bit of
He gets killed twice essentially, right? Because he gets I think a slow blade through the chest, and then he gets up and comes back to he essentially didn't die. He pulls the blade out. That's, again, if you want to go to like moments in this movie that I absolutely loved, it was that whole bit where he saves Paul and Jessica in the hallway, and the little bit with the with the blade across the heart and across the head.
I was like, oh, go.
There's little visual moments in movies that are just like kind of weird, that like just fucking get me going. Like one of them is in Mission Impossible, the last one, when Henry Cavill cocks his arms. You ever see that movie where they're fighting in the bathroom and he literally cocks his arms like they're guns? Like that scene, I could watch that one bit over and over again. And Jason Momoa doing that hand to the heart and then blade to the head thing, and then the door shutting on him was fucking fantastic. I love that part.
Yeah, I was like, yes, it's got something. It's gonna be a good fight scene. It's very. I just like how they came up with that. That kind of it's a hand, almost like the handshake signal or whatever for the Atreides clan, right? So that got me going too. Actually, to move on, I realized I totally forgot to mention Javier Bardem.
Oh, we forgot. Well, he's kind of. I think he's going to be a bigger part in part 2, obviously. But yeah, he plays the leader of the Fremen. What's his character? Stilgar.
Stilgar.
Yeah. Of course, Friendo from, if we want to go back to No Country.
Anton Chigurh, yes, that's why. Yeah, I mean, one of the best bad guys ever. But yeah, I mean, he seems to have. I think he'll have a bigger part coming up in the second because he's basically the leader of the Fremen. Although I think he's probably going to cede it because he almost cedes it right at the end of this one.
Yeah. A little bit more about some of the tech we enjoyed in this movie. I'm going to tell you one of my favorite bits of this whole movie. And we get to see a lot of CGI stuff, and the world feels very lived in, right? We do see the worm. The worm is different in this one. It doesn't have like kind of like the trifolds. It's just a straight up butthole with teeth.
A lamprey.
it's a lamprey essentially. To me, one of the coolest things in this whole movie are those dragonfly copters.
Yes.
That these fuckers are flying around through the whole thing.
I wrote that down too. Those are great thopters. Oh, that's hard to say.
They
sort of flap, as they call them, thopters.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, that's a kind of a weird, doesn't really roll off the tongue. But yeah, they start flapping. I was like, that is cool.
Well, yeah, they're pushed back, and then when they get in, they spring out, so you recognize the form, and then they just start to flap, and you're like, holy fuck. And one of the things I loved about this movie is it wasn't like in one scene. Once they decided to use those, they're like, fuck it, they're in every scene in this movie.
Yeah. And I mean, they used it later on, right? That what they used to dump Jessica and Paul in the that was a different ship. But yeah, I mean, they had it in there a bunch of times.
Yeah. No, it was another thopter when the Harkonnen the thugs were going to drop them off because Harkonnen said he wouldn't kill them, but he didn't say he wouldn't drop them off to die. It was his whole thing.
Those are mercenaries that joined the Harkonnen, right? There's a Sandakar. Is that what were those people?
Those were Harkonnens.
Oh, they were Harkonnens.
But the Sardaukar are the Emperor's elite guard. So the whole idea is, like you said earlier, the Emperor wants the Atreides to fail on Arrakis, and he is going to facilitate the Harkonnens taking over. And the way he does it is he tells the Harkonnens, he tells Vladimir, send your men and you could have 2 battalion of my men, or 3, I think he says. So when you're on the planet and you get that scene where Dr. Yui lets the shields down and, you get all the ships descending and all that, that was a very cool scene. The attack on Arrakis. The guys all in the white suits were the Sardaukar, and the guys in the black suits were Harkonnens. And I got to say, there's something for a movie that actually has a scene where I guess very realistically, the Vladimir Harkonnen has to account for the amount of money that this invasion cost him, because he tells Rabin, he's like, start selling all the spice reserves and producing again because I have to offset what this costs me. I'm like, wow, you never see any bad guy ever talking about his cost to loss ratio. You don't ever see that.
Yeah, the defense budgets are overblown in the year, 10,009?
10,191, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, too, to bring that into it, because that makes it more of a story from the medieval times, sort of, King Arthur type of thing, because even Roman times where they really had to pay attention, right? They needed money to pay off people to build stuff. Right. They did it always, and I thought that was a nice touch for that, to actually have that be a part of the story.
It's a worry of his. It's like, this isn't just, okay, we got the planet back, but like, we just can't sit here now. We have to start producing. We have to start selling, because this whole incursion cost me like $8 million, and I don't have that. And I got to pay because I think when Peter de Vries goes to the planet and gets the soldiers, he kind of mentions that this is going to cost a lot. I like the fact that you get those quick moments with de Vries on one side and Thufir on the other side, where their eyes go white and they do the calculations real quick, and you realize that, because that's part of this whole world, is there are no computers, there's no real AI. Like, these guys are like human trained AI that can do calculations right off the bat.
I mean, or they could have just taken a good math class.
Or, yeah, I mean, maybe some of the classes you took in school, Joe. I don't know. What did you feel about the overall tone, Joe? Like, beginning to end. Now, one of the things that a lot of people are saying, and again, this is just throwing it out there, is this is a boring movie. Okay? It's 2 hours and a half long. there are not a ton of action scenes. What did you feel? When you watched this, did you feel, what's happening next? Where are we going? Or were you like, hey, I'm in for the ride?
I mean, I was in for the ride. Like I said, I love Denis Villeneuve. I think some of it got a little long and boring. I think they could have done without some of the flashbacks, some of the visions that Paul had. I think those were kind of got a little bit long, and there were some slow-mo-y scenes that sort of. I hate to get it, call it Snyder-esque, because I just don't think Snyder's on Villeneuve's level. But it was very artistic. I'm going to sit through it. I didn't have an issue. I mean, for once I got to sit through a movie that was, I usually don't get to sit through a movie in one sitting, right? This time I made sure I did. And it was, Sunday night, stayed up late for it. And a 2.5-hour movie for me to do that, I thought really kept my interest. But I think they could have tightened it a bit. I can see why, if you're looking for a big sci-fi, going back to the beginning of whether you want to see part one or cut it in half, if you want to see a big sci-fi adventure, you're probably disappointed. Here's something that I don't want to say I was disappointed in, but I could see where it was a bit anticlimactic. So, Leto dies, and Jessica and Paul end up on, basically in the fucking shit, right? They're in the middle of Arrakis, in the desert. They meet up with Stilgar and his Fremen, and Paul keeps having these visions. And in two visions, he has two very separate visions. He has one where this one particular character is kind of going to be a mentor to him. And then he has another vision where this guy kills him. He ends up invoking like kind of a right of their people. And when that happens, they have to have a duel to the death, right? And it's this character. So we get this bit where Paul and the what was the character's name? Said Jameis. That was
Jameis, right? So him and Jameis have this battle, which is essentially kind of like a pretty brief knife fight between the two of them. Paul is given a knife that was made from one of the worm's teeth by the Zendaya character Chani, who in his dreams he kept having a dream about, as the Messiah, he's going to receive this knife from his loved one, and he keeps having dreams about her over and over again. But they have this fight, and it's fairly quick, and in no surprise at all to anybody that's ever seen the old movie or knows the whole thing, that there's going to be a second half. He kills him, and the movie ends basically on that. The Fremen accept Paul. Now, as the story goes further, if you want to go to the 84 one, we know that he eventually becomes Paul Muad'Dib. He spends a lot of time there, and him and Jessica become, really entrenched with them, and he becomes the leader of the Fremen eventually. I
can tell you in the book, that's the most draggy part. I feel like he's just walking around the desert for like the middle third, or like the 25% from half the book to 3/4. That was the only part of the book that dragged.
Do you think that was an anticlimactic spot to end the movie? Because it's really like the conflict between him and what was it, Jameis? Is non-existent until it's there. So it's not like, it would almost be like, let's say he was down on the planet and he ran into a Harkonnen, or like, let's say Rabin or someone, or even if they had included the Fade Rauthra character and they had their fight, you would feel like it would mean more to the sense of this movie ending than this one did. I get what they're going for. There's the movie's ending and they're setting up where we're going to be for the next movie, but I felt so anticlimactic in this fight. Joe, did you feel that way at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just ended the wrong spot. So I had a conversation with a friend about it before we watched it. I think he's going to see it next week in the theater because he wants to do IMAX. But he was like, I think it's going to end when he's riding the worm. I'm like, that's the very end. There's just no way, right? That's too close to the end of the movie to have a whole other movie when he's thinking like it would be a cliffhanger, like there's Paul and the worm. I kind of figured it wasn't going to end there. But I guess I didn't figure it would end where it was. It was if you didn't have a part, that's what we're talking about. If you didn't have a part two, that might be the least satisfying ending that I've ever seen in a movie.
If this movie did not garner a part two, and again, I understand that it's almost hard to call it an ending when it's essentially going to lead to something else, but you're absolutely right. It would have been like, holy shit. Like, and I sensed it, like I didn't look at the time, but I'm thinking about where we're at in the story right now, how long I've been watching this, and I'm like, this fight is going to be the last thing we see in this movie, because there's nothing really to go back to other than them moving forward, because Leto's dead, the Harkonnens are doing their thing, and I just felt like there was nowhere to move back to. And the movie essentially ends there, and you get the directed by Denis Villeneuve, and at that point, 3 days ago, I'm like, well, I wonder if there's gonna be a part 2, because I just felt like it just ended so anticlimactically.
And I mean, once I heard there was only part 1, I was hoping there's a part 2. Because it's not a well-known book anymore. It probably has a lot of rabid fans, that it's just a small number of people, right? So it wasn't really designed to be a blockbuster. And I think even now, I mean, it's doing pretty well, but it's not through the roof, just enough to get it. Like, they're making money, so they're making their money back. And probably my guess is worldwide they're going to make more. It's going to make its money. Worldwide gross is probably driving the sequel more. To me, I don't know. I mean, it was got a good first weekend, but they had a real danger that there would be no sequel, and that would have irritated me. I mean, I'm glad they told us now, and not let it make us wait like weeks to greenlight. They probably had it ready to go once they got opening week numbers. They were like, boom, it's greenlit.
Did you have the budget for this by any chance?
Yeah, I think I saw it was $165 million.
All right, that's actually not bad for a movie that's so heavy on CGI. Well, I mean, I don't mean heavy. I mean, they use a lot of CGI to enhance stuff, and also locales. Like, this movie is filmed, like we said, in Jordan and these kind of far off places in the world.
But they're probably cheap on, right? They do film, like, if you're doing all kinds of studio work in Hungary, it's because you're not paying union.
Yeah.
Right. You're paying low budget. I mean,
yeah.
In a country with a dictator, well, in other countries with the kings, I mean, they're like, your labor is going to be really cheap.
All right. That's fair.
But I think the worldwide gross was like 220 at the weekend. And I think that's when they said, okay, boom, number 2 is coming.
Okay. Well, hey, look, it obviously made a decent chunk of change. Are you looking forward, before we rate this, are you looking forward to part 2? What would you say? What's your excitement level for part 2?
Oh, I think it's pretty high. I mean, I have such a love for his work, Villeneuve's work, that, like I said, I wanted to see this more so because I knew he was directing it. I mean, I was going to see it regardless, but I was pretty hyped up for it because of him. So no matter what, I'll be hyped up for the next one.
All right, Joe, I think it's that time in Pint of Comics where we rate this film. Now, I know we went through this one a little bit differently than we normally do, but not every movie has 1,700 people in the cast. Yeah. So we kind of jumped around and touched different things. And we touched on stuff we liked and some stuff that we weren't crazy about. But let's formulate our 5-star reviews at this point. 0 to 5, 0 being the worst, 5 being the best, quarter and half scale optional. You've done this before, Joe. Where do you place 2021's Dune?
So, this is where I struggle because I love Denis Villeneuve. I don't think I've had if I was to rate his other movies on here, I don't think I've had anything less than a 4. I mean, I would probably put 4 or 5. I mean, I like Sicario was amazing to me. And any other year, it might have been my favorite movie. It just happened to be the same year as Fury Road. So, come on.
Right.
I'm not going to choose Sicario over that. But I'm even Prisoners. I was so surprised by how good it was. It's just like, wow, I just didn't know. I didn't know who. I didn't know what this movie was. And Hugh Jackman, I'll watch it. It was amazing. I mean, I enjoyed the slow burn of Blade Runner. And I think you got to check out Arrival. It's good. So I'm already, as I've told before, I'm always like a grade on a scale. But, I think there's some, if the issues with where it ended, I guess my rating could go up once the whole part 2 comes out and I put it all together. But I think I'm going to stick at I'll give it a 4.25. I mean, I liked it. It gave me what I wanted and better action than 1984. I think it had a lot of good stuff. There's still some questions I have about, Bene Gesserit powers and, where that's going to go, even though I sort of know, right? I just want to see how it represents on screen.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think 4.25.
All right. This one's tough for me. I want to watch it again. It's on HBO Max. If you have not seen it yet, till November 21st. So if you have HBO Max, it's in the movie theaters. So if you're feeling safe enough, go check it out. I want to watch it again. I'm going to go with a 3, but I also think some of that is based on comparison to 84, which again, I'm not saying I'm a huge fan of, but because that's what I know about Dune, you know, I do think the Harkonnens are infinitely more interesting in 84. I think the performances in this one are very good. Timothée Chalamet, I'm not familiar with at all, except for I always hate the way that he spells Timothy with the H-E-E and an apostrophe. Every time I see his name, I just feel like saying, if there's a Y in there, dude. But I got to be honest, he was actually pretty strong in this, I thought. You know, he plays this like kind of like confused young guy who's on the precipice of being king, but he's also on the precipice of being the fucking, the savior of the universe, and he's trying to find his place in the universe. Rebecca Ferguson was really good in it. Oscar Isaac is good, but doesn't get a whole lot of time. Jason Momoa, again, I loved him in this. Always liked him. Like you said, always liked a lot about that guy, and I'm glad to see him kind of really like putting his stamp on something. Yeah, good cast. I didn't like the idea of this being a part 1 without a part 2 promise. That bothers me for some reason, and I can't hold it against the final, I guess, product, but there's a part of me that holds it against that. I do feel like the ending is anticlimactic, like I just said a million times. I just felt like, him having a knife fight with a character that we've only met in the last like 6 minutes of the movie, it doesn't matter. It matters to the rest of the story, but unfortunately it doesn't matter enough. Like think about Lord of the Rings, think about the Fellowship, the last 10 minutes of the Fellowship, where the stakes are so fucking huge, right? Boromir gets killed, and the Uruk-hai steal the fucking hobbits, and Aragorn has the fight with fucking what was his name, Lurtz or whatever. It's so huge. And when that movie ends, you're literally like your dick is hard and your nipples are hard, and you're sitting there going, when does part 2 come out? And this movie does not end with me going, when does part 2 come out? It just ends, and I go, okay, well, part 2 is now coming, we know, at this point. But I know what's going to happen in part 2, essentially, because I've seen the 84 version, and I'm just extrapolating on that. So I don't know if that all makes sense, but
I just had a different view where it's like, now I need it, right? I was angry too. I'm like, God, I hope they have a 2. I'm like, I went it the same way. Like, God, why did they cut it in half? What happens if it tanks? Because I really thought it could tank, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a small property. It's old book, right? It's not like it's been continually, I mean, I'm sure it's in its own print. It's just not like new people are probably not discovering at the rate they're still reading Tolkien, right? Or, Harry Potter will last another 40 years.
Right.
But still, I think, now that I know, I'm now itching for part 2. So I'm excited for it. And like I said, my rating of this one could even go up depending on how part 2 goes. If it stinks for some unknown reason, I don't believe it will, this rating can go down. I mean, they're linked together now. And I can't wait for I'm like, can I wait 2 years? Like, I'm sure I will, but
yeah, because that's the other problem with this movie as comparative to a lot of, like when The Hobbit, I didn't see any of them. When the Hobbit movies came out, they came out year after year after year because they were all made.
Yeah.
Now you've got the whole, okay, they just announced it yesterday, so now they have to get all the cast together, and that could take forever, and they have to film it, and that's going to take a year, and then they have to do post-production, and this is a CG heavy movie, that's going to take half a year or a year. You're not going to see this part 2 for 2 or 3 years. And you got to wonder how many casual people are going to remember how this one ended, like are going to care that much, I will say, I think this movie did a really good job of presenting the world and the world building and not making it so hard to understand everything. Now, I wonder if part of that is because I'm familiar with the characters from the 84 version. I think if I just go into my brain here, I think that I could have watched this movie fresh and understood everything just from what they gave me on the screen. right? You might have to get another viewing in to solidify it, but I understand. Oh, the Bene Gesserits are some kind of like powerful witch society, and the concubine had this kid. I mean, I think I could put everything together.
I think it'd be harder. I guess I would think it'd be tough, but all I have is the other versions to put together, right? If I would probably go through it in my head and probably get it. But like I said, you're saying 84 is in your head, right? I get the book. I'm thinking if to a layperson, it would be tough. Like a person coming in cold, I think it might be sort of tough to realize, what's exactly going on. I mean, because it's just like, here's this world, right? I mean, you don't get a lot of sci-fi, right? To me, at least I haven't seen it. That's not, except for Star Wars, not based on Earth, right? Earth is not the home planet here,
right?
And so I think that also can lead to confusion for people because you got all these planets that aren't Earth. So,
well, all these planets aren't Earth. The year is 10,191.
Yeah, that one's like blows my mind.
Right.
You've never seen something that's of Buck Rogers, right?
And they haven't introduced some of the really weird elements that we got in the 84 version, whether they're coming or not. Like the giant space fetus that like comes in the beginning. Remember that with the vagina mouth and all that? Like we haven't even gotten to that shit yet. So let's let everybody take a little bit of time. So Joe gives it a 4.25. I give it a 3. My 3 is not indicative of this being a bad movie. This might be one that grows on me in time. And I did enjoy watching it, and I do want to watch it again. There's just certain things. I really feel like that ending is just like kind of like a wet fart. Like, oh, the ending to part 1 is he fights a guy that he met on the street. Like, oh, who cares?
Yeah, and I mean, can we bring back Duncan Idaho, a la Darth Maul?
Yeah,
he survived.
Yeah, I was. I know
you can't do that, but I'm like, can he get his own show on HBO?
Yeah, like a Duncan Idaho. There is actually going to be, I believe, the Dune Sisters. It's called.
Oh, I did see that.
And it's going to be. I think it's going to be about the Bene Gesserits. So that is coming to HBO Max. Funnily enough, but yeah, no Duncan Idaho. It was funny because out of the two characters, him and Gurney, played by Brolin, who were very similar, right? Like Gurney is kind of like the other like weaponer of that crew, the Atreides. I was like, man, I would have rather had him had died, and we kept Duncan around.
That's exactly what I thought. I mean, I think fans would be angry. They probably could have pulled it off, but
yeah, because really, I mean, and again, this is a first half of a movie, and characters do disappear. But during that whole invasion, Gurney is just, that's the last time you see him. You don't see him die. You don't see anything like that. So hopefully we'll get him back. I think from 84 version we do, if I remember correctly. So all right.
If I can make one final point, since we didn't cover it, the visions. Okay.
Yeah.
So why, they had so many visions. I didn't feel that the Spice vision was as crazy. Just like, ooh, maybe he's a little high, but they had so many other visions that didn't stick out, I think, the way it was supposed to. And on top of that, when you also see how he had those visions of Jameis, one killing him, one not, yet it didn't come true, either one, right?
Right.
That I wonder if, so in one sense, the visual style of the Spice vision was just, to me, a little bit CGI add-on compared to the regular visions. And then I thought maybe his, incorrect visions were that he's not a full-on Bene Gesserit master or whatever. So what are your thoughts on that? Yeah,
no, I agree. He has so many visions in this movie that when he starts to have the drug-fueled ones, they should have been a little bit wackier, or at least a little bit more. Yeah, no, you're right. They weren't. And I think one of the ones he has when he is on the Spice, because he's breathing the Spice in from being on Arrakis, is that one where he's in the suit and he's fighting everybody, and he kills a couple guys. And I thought that was one of the worst effects in the whole movie. Was he's fighting everybody. You don't see it's him because he's got a helmet on. He kills the guy. He rolls over another guy backwards, and then he lifts the helmet up, and it's him with the blue eyes on blue. And it just looked really kind of badly CGI'd to me. And I was like, fuck, this one fucking scene. You could have done so much better with that. It didn't look right. But yeah, I don't know. And then, yeah, like you said, what kind of a messiah is he if he's having visions that aren't coming true? Or is that supposed to be the idea of that his actions are going to dictate what happens and not what he sees, you know. I don't know. And maybe we'll find more out in Dune Part 2, as they're going to call it, in 7 or 8 years.
And I'm going to make a bold prediction, since it's supposed to be, it said 2023 slate, right? To release. So 2 years.
I didn't see. Yeah.
I think I said that. I want to predict, I'm going to do my best to do that in person. That's my vision. Well, hopefully do something in person before that, but Dune, we'll do an in-person podcast for that.
You're coming up from the Be More. All right.
If it's not next year, like I hope, it will be 2023.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be next year, Joe. I think if they film it next year, we'll be lucky. But
oh no, I mean me coming up to do a live pod.
Oh yeah, no, we're the table is always open. The table is always open. All right, Joe, thank you so much for doing this episode with me. Always great to have you on. Now let's talk about Pint Comics for a second. If you want to go to Instagram, follow us. It's Pint_O_comics. That's where I'm most active. If you want to go to Twitter, @Pint Comics. And if you want to go to Facebook, it's Pint O Comics. If you want to check us out, if you've never heard the show before, and this is somehow your accidental first time, and you go, hey, I like that show, you can find us on iHeartRadio. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, any of the podcatchers out there at all. Joe, do you want to give everybody out there your Twitter information so they can follow you there and on Instagram?
I'll say on Twitter, I'm Joe Loves Chem. On Instagram, I guess just my name. I never look at my Instagram handle.
All right.
And then I'm on Facebook. Find my name, Joe Darting. So I'm on all those. You won't see anything crazy. I don't post conspiracy theories, just fun stuff. And I've loved becoming part of the Pint family and all the people that it's brought me to. And there's so much interesting stuff there that I've actually been able to change my feed over the crazy people putting stuff in there to fun stuff that I can enjoy. So.
That's awesome. Well, we're always glad to have you, Joe, and appreciate all you do for the show. And as we always say, Joe, do you want to say it today?
See ya.
It's over, Johnny. It's over. Nothing is over. Nothing. You just don't turn it off.